Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is the basketball series on the move. So I'm currently traveling at the moment. I will be hosting this solo today. So appreciate that you all love the sound of my voice. Solo Pro has bombed on the time that we had scheduled, just not understanding time differences too well. The Americans usually struggle with realizing that the other side of the world does exist. So a bit of miscommunication, but Pro has bombed on the time. So we're going to just throw him under the bus completely and blame him. But hopefully he'll be here in a couple of weeks. So when he gives me shit about only doing this every 2 weeks, we can't even get that right at the moment. So I apologize, but all good in jest. Pro will be back in a couple of weeks' time when we hopefully do part 2 of this. But I'm going to get right into it. Trent's going to jump in on some things every now and then. I'll get his opinion on a few things just so we have a second voice so you're not drowned out by my beautiful lyrics. But let's get rolling. Team of the week for me this week, or the last 2 weeks, I'm going to give it to the Chicago Bulls. They're playing much, much better with this outlier, no Zach Lavine. He's been hurt. They are 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 3 straight. They've moved in to solidify the 11th spot, so they're 1 spot out of the play-in. They're only half a game behind Atlanta. That's in the loss column. Atlanta 12-15, Chicago 13-17. But it's very interesting to see just the way they're playing without Zach Lavine, who was supposed to be, potentially an all-league player, a guy that can get you buckets from time to time. We've seen him, with a 50-point game last season. He can definitely score with the best of them. At this point in his career, I think it's year 9 or 10 for him. Is he a winner? Is he a guy that you can surround youth, veteran leadership and get wins? In Chicago, no. In Minnesota, no. So there's rumors that he's on the trade block. I don't blame Chicago for that. I think his value now, with the Bulls playing so well, actually drops, because I think people are going to look at this like, well, hang on a second, the Bulls, you guys were really struggling, down towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference, in a bit of form, 7-3 in their last 10, won 3 straight, no Zach Lavine. What's going on there? So people might read between the lines there, but I got to give them a shout out. They're playing very, very good basketball. It's good to see. I always appreciate when these teams in the lower end of whatever conference just fight their way and get some wins. And that was the Orlando Magic last season. They're a prime example of a team that they were in the bottom 5 and they were still scratching and clawing. It wasn't a walk-in, walk-out win to go to Orlando. A year later, you fast forward to now, and they're 4th in the East and playing really good basketball. So I think it's important, even for these teams that are tanking and rebuilding, to have a sense of professionalism that starts from their GM and their coach down. Yeah, we are tanking subtly, but we still want to instill a winning environment, and that's where it's a tricky mix. And I think the Bulls now seem like they're still, trying to be professional, and they might even sneak into a play-in. I still don't love their roster, but they are playing a better brand of basketball right now. So I got to give them a shout out for my team of the week. The other obvious one was the Clippers. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They've found it. They've put it together. They're playing really good basketball right now. It seems like they've got a good flow going with that starting unit, with Westbrook and Powell coming off the bench. They're doing some good things, but obviously we all think that they should be up there anyway, which is why I went with the Chicago Bulls. Trent, what do you think about those 2 teams specifically for Team of the Week?
It's interesting. Like the Bulls have no expectations at this point. So I think once a guy like Lavine goes out, who's taking a lot of shots, it gets a lot more of the other guys involved, and you see guys like Kobe White have been balling, and like now they get their opportunity. You can see they're getting comfortable, and it results in wins. So like it'll be interesting to see what happens to Lavine in the next couple of weeks, come trade deadline Feb.
Yeah, I just don't know what value they're going to get back. That's the issue now for the Bulls. Is like, are you're probably happy with, you obviously have to match some sort of salary there and get an expiring, try to get some picks with it, but I don't know if teams are going to give that up. It might be a swap for an expiring is probably the best you're going to get. So it'd be interesting to see just the direction they go there. All right, moving on to my weak team of the last 2 weeks, and kind of a controversial one, but I'm going with the Phoenix Suns. They just haven't looked good. They look real clunky. They just, they have dealt with some injuries, but look, when you've got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, if one of those 3 go out, you're still expected to win most games, or at least be in most games. Hasn't been so. They look discombobulated. They don't look like they're on the same page. Inconsistent basketball. They have two of the best scorers in the league. Even Beal's an up there scorer, but with Booker and Durant, who have been healthy for the most part for the season. Booker was hurt a little bit earlier, but they've both been playing lately. They've got two guys that can get you 50 on any given night. It just doesn't – it's not fitting well. The injuries haven't helped them, like I said, but they're squandering leads. They've got a stagnant offense. They have defensive lapses. They turn the ball over like crazy. And it just seems like they're the kind of the Clippers from last season or the season before. Like, we're a real talented roster. Let's just make sure we get to the playoffs at whatever cost. We're going to limp into the playoffs, and then we're going to turn it on. And that's a dangerous cocktail in the NBA. If you don't have continuity, and if you don't have, form of playing together and knowing guys' strengths and weaknesses and all that kind of stuff, it definitely hurts. Okogie's been okay. He's been in and out of the lineup for him. Grayson Allen's been okay as a role player for him. Damian Lee's been, hurt for the most part. Watanabe hasn't been as good as he was in Brooklyn. Nurkic has been solid for him. Is he the long-term answer at 30, 35 minutes? I don't know, but he's been pretty solid. Eric Gordon's actually revitalized himself a little bit, so I've been pretty pleased with the way he's played. Then obviously Durant and Booker and Beal, but this team just looks like it's a team of stars that you put together on 2K right now that has never played together. And I always kind of stress about these kind of teams with this kind of star power not playing enough basketball together and getting the runs on the board and getting continuity. Devin Booker likes the ball here, or KD likes this play, or hey, he just made 3 in a row. What can we do to get him an easy one? They don't have that yet. And the good teams do. You look at some of these good teams who are nowhere near as talented. They're on autopilot with that kind of stuff, and that's what makes good teams, very, very good and even better. So they're up there with one of the ill-performing teams, in my opinion, of the last couple of weeks. Who else do we have? We had obviously the Detroit Pistons. They're still in the mix. They've lost 25 straight, and they're gonna eclipse their franchise record, which was broken about 3 weeks ago. I think it was 15 or 14 or whatever it was. So I think the league record, I'm not sure what that is, Trent, if you want to look it up. I think it might be close. They might be close to a league record for all-time losses in a row, which you never want to be in the conversation of. The Charlotte Hornets have lost 6 straight, so they're not playing good basketball neither. Brooklyn Nets have lost 4 straight. They've been up and down. Orlando Magic have lost 4 straight, so they're not playing the best basketball. The Lakers, who I had picked as a 10, are actually 10th right now. There are some injuries there with LeBron and whatnot, but they've lost 4 straight, and the rest of the league has been pretty consistent. The Spurs finally got a win about a week ago. Portland Trailblazers have been inconsistent, but decent for a crappy team. They're at least competitive. Memphis Grizzlies have won 2 straight with the return of Ja Morant. So I had them picked in my 6. They are a far way back. They're still 6 games away from the 10 seed, which is the Lakers. But I think they can get some momentum going. They have a really good roster, and they're starting to get healthy. I think Marcus Smart returns next week. They are starting way back on that start line, but 8-19 right now. They'll need to go, probably, 650, 700 the rest of the way to probably make a nice little push. But I think they're capable of doing that. And I think they're a very good team with Durant. But what are your thoughts around the Suns, Trent?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, you get rid of Monty and you bring in Frank Vogel, and you don't have any continuity in your lineups because everyone's injured to start the season. So I don't think it's that surprising. You've traded away all your depth as well to get Bradley and Kevin Durant. So you now have a team that's been gutted, no brand new head coach. So it's not super surprising. It'll be interesting to see if they even have any flexibility to do anything at the trade deadline. But yeah, like, if they can't get those 3 guys playing and getting reps together, then I can't see much changing come playoff time.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. And I mean, they've got some talent. Look, you probably still don't want to face them in the playoffs, at least in the first round, if you're one of these higher seeds. And then, all of a sudden, you're a Minnesota, and then it's a 1v8 out of the play-in or whatever it is. You don't want to face Phoenix in that first round. So they have some danger there because they can get hot, but it does not look good right now. Very, very clunky.
Just before you go there, Bogues, 2014-15 and 2015-16 season, the Philadelphia 76ers lost 28 straight games spanning across those 2 years. So that is currently the longest consecutive loss streak in NBA history, the 76ers.
So the Pistons are 3 games away from tying that. Let's have a look at their little schedule coming up. They got Brooklyn twice, who have lost 4 straight, and they're going to look at these 2 games as potentially a must-win for them. I think they probably win both of those. Boston after that, and then Toronto and Houston. So I think from a betting man, they got to get one of these Brooklyn games. It's a home and I think it's a home and home. Yeah, it is to home and home. So if they get one of those 2, I think they're happy. But not looking good in Michigan, in Motor City for all you Pistons fans. I don't see them getting out of that hole. And I've got a slight suspicion that they have every chance to set an NBA record in the next week or 2. We'll find out for the next podcast and see how that goes. All right, there was a very, very, I wouldn't say intriguing, but very crazy story that's come out of somewhat the NBA G League. There is a player who's been arrested for murder, which is just absolutely bonkers when you read the story. His name is Chance Comanche. The Sacramento Kings in October, later assigned to their G League affiliate Stockton Kings after being waived. Anyway, he's admitted to a murder of a prostitute, and it's just a crazy story. Apparently, he was seeing a girl that knew the prostitute, and she was his friend or girlfriend said, "I owe this this working girl some money or some items or something like that, and I can't pay him back, and she's going to come after me." So they hatched a plan to lure her into an appointment for some servicing of Chance, and he said that he was into BDSM and all that kind of tying up type shit, and they tied the sex worker up and murdered her and dumped her. Here we go, over a Rolex watch, essentially over a beef over a Rolex watch, and then dumped her somewhere in Vegas, and used a cord to strangle her, a HDMI cord apparently. Just an absolutely crazy story, and he's admitted to it. He's been arrested, and this isn't just the guy that's on the end of the bench. I mean, not that numbers matter, but just for context, he was 12.7 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, so not a scrub in the G League, a guy that actually played, and police show up to the practice facility and yank him out of the practice facility, and safe to say he's going to be the clink for a long, long time. But this kind of stuff, like imagine just being in a locker room and your stall is next to this guy who, I don't know when this was alleged to have happened, whether it was in the off season or not. Here we go, arrested December 13. But anyway, I mean, imagine you sit next to a guy that just, killed somebody. December 6, early hours of December 6. So he just rocks up to practice. Hey guys, let's get a good session in. And he just murdered someone 4 hours earlier, which is just absolutely crazy. I've seen some crazy stuff in the NBA, and you obviously rest in peace to the young lady that's deceased. But these kind of things you don't hear very often. You hear a lot of different stuff in the NBA, but this one is a head scratcher. Obviously, his career's over. Not that he was really an NBA chance, but still a decent, consistent NBA G League player. 27 years old. He's going to end up going to do his time, and rightfully so. But just something that the NBA G League would be fraying right now, that this is attached to their league, because you just don't see this kind of stuff very much. Moving on from that, a bit of Anthony Edwards' baby mama drama. So, for those not familiar, he's knocked up a girl. She's aired all the dirty laundry on the internet, of course. He's begging her to get an abortion. I'm not sure where it's ended, but just thought, with everything he's going through, he's a pretty likable character as far as his media persona and whatnot. But these young guys, I mean, there's just there's just always something between, himself, Zion, Ja Morant. There's just a lot of drama in that young group of superstars, which I know the league doesn't love. But as soon as, and I look up for Anthony Edwards' sake, I mean, her posting that on the internet, I think is not great either. I don't think that's a good look for her or anybody involved. But I think, you just got to be careful these days. Like we've spoken about it at length. Don't need to go into it about groupies and women and this and that. And it seems like Edwards treated it more as a business transaction, and it seems as though she didn't. And it's going to be very interesting. So I guess both sides are lawyering up as we speak, and who knows where that's all going to go. But you hate to see those kind of stories. They do happen a lot, and most of them happen behind closed doors, involving lawyers, cash settlements, this and that. Yes, that happens in the NBA. It happens in Hollywood. It happens in the NFL. Happens all the time. There's so much things that happen in those leagues that you'd have no idea about, that you would be, pretty shocked to understand that it's normal. It becomes normalized in those leagues. But you hate when it's aired out in public for anyone's sake. I don't know if she's trying to create more leverage for herself or show him for the person that he is, whatever it is. But for both of them, I think they look like idiots, in my opinion. This one was interesting. Nikola Jokic has signed with 361, which is a shoe brand out of China. China kind of has pumped the brakes as of recent on overspending on guys in the NBA, but I'm very intrigued that the MVP, former two-time MVP, championship winner, has just left Nike so easily that Nike would let him walk. And now Nike's been notorious. I was a Nike athlete, so I can speak from experience. They went through a phase where they were just looking to spend on top-line guys. So KD, Kyrie, those kind of guys that we're going to invest in these guys. We're not really interested in international guys specifically. I mean, Giannis is there. They've got Giannis already. But to have a two-time MVP just be Nike not even really try to fight or wrestle for to keep in their reins is pretty interesting stuff. But anyway, I mean, the Chinese money is big. The shoes, for those wondering, have gotten much better. I had a former teammate of mine, Klay Thompson, signed with Anta. He was early on in his journey with Anta. The shoes were not great, he said, but he said they were awesome to deal with. And these Chinese brands will basically send someone out, to you in the US or wherever you're playing, and actually fit a shoe for your foot. So they'll make sure that it fits you best. Most guys wear orthotics on top of that. So I'd anticipate that in 2023, these shoes will be just perfect. People that think Nike's going to be 10 times better, I think that gap's narrowed, and if not the same, there's a lot of the same quote unquote sweatshops that are making the same shit over there anyway. But just an interesting one, Trent, to see. I haven't seen an MVP bolt and leave for a Chinese company.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think when you think of Nike, like, you don't think Jokic. I think that's probably what it came down to, if I'm assuming. Like, you're a two-time MVP, and you're not being utilized by the biggest shoe brand in basketball. So it'd be interesting if any more information comes out as to why he has it. It says here that it is a multi-year deal. And his teammate Aaron Gordon is also signed to 361 degrees. So it'd be interesting to know if there's any influence from Aaron to kind of bring him over or not. But yeah, it just sounds like a lack of care from Nike. Similar situation with Curry, and he wasn't a two-time MVP, where it's just, letting a big guy walk. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, the fact that Nike spelled Curry's name wrong in their presentation, I don't know if you knew that, but when they presented to him back in the day, they spelled his name wrong on their presentation to re-up him, which didn't go down too well. But if you look at the Nike athletes currently, you got LeBron James, Giannis, Paul George, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, LaMelo Ball, Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, so Ja Morant, Doncic. So they got a pretty good stable, but it's just interesting that they don't have two-time MVP. He's probably arguably the best player in the world right now, which is something that Nike historically has not done. They've always had the best of the best, and if they didn't have the best, it was just because Adidas poached one or one of these brands. But to go to a Chinese brand is I think it's a noble move as well. He's getting more money, obviously. That would be probably why it's happened. Probably felt disrespected a little bit by Nike and just felt like another number. Whereas, they're going to really make him the face of the brand. He's going to be all over China, and I think he's going to have some Chinese off-season trips to complete, and he'll be an absolute star over there and be able to expand his business empire and maybe expand his horse racing empire along the way. All right, we're going to go through Aussies in the NBA, and interesting couple of weeks for a number of guys. Roll through, I'll say the best for last, but Dyson Daniels, much of the same as a last week. His minutes have significantly dried up since the return of CJ McCollum. He's down to 3.4 points, 2.4 rebounds, 1.8 assists per game. So just attrition, really. You got a healthy superstar in front of you that's come back. Your minutes have dried up, but I still think you'll find a role. The only issue I find with New Orleans is they got Alvarado, who's a smaller, similar version of Dyson Daniels. Pesky, very good defensively, picks up full court, a smaller version. So they've got two guys they can go to in some of these games for some energy off the bench. So he's lost a lot of his minutes because of CJ McCollum, and also Alvarado's come back and taken a little bit of his minutes. He was hurt earlier in the season. So Dyson still seems to be decently productive, but he just doesn't have those 20 to 25 minutes anymore to really be, he got one of our Aussie players of the week. He had a really good start to the season, and he's going to be tough to do that with the current rotation that they have. Josh Green still out. He's currently out for a few weeks with the right elbow, and that was reported a couple of weeks ago. He's still not back, so it should be any day now, I think, where he's back and coming back for the Mavs. Joe Ingles, left ankle sprain, December 12th. He did that the day after our last podcast, and he's been out since, so it didn't look too good. He's getting older, just like we all do, so it probably takes a couple extra weeks. So hopefully see him back in the lineup. And they've lost four straight without him. Not saying he's a huge reason why, but he's a great kind of steadying influence they have off the bench there in Orlando, and they're struggling a little bit for form with their rotations right now. So hopefully he's back and healthy as soon as possible. Jock Landale, no real stats to report. 7.3 minutes a game the last 2 weeks. I mean, 1 point, under a rebound. So he's struggled a little bit just to find his spot. Jeff Green's taken a little bit of his minutes. They've shortened their rotations. So he's just got to continue to be, an energy guy off the bench, be a good teammate. There are obviously guys in his spot that become frustrated in these circumstances. He signed a pretty big contract to go there, although it's a 4-year non-guarantee. It's essentially a 1-year deal with team options. That's the way I would look at it. But he's going to remain professional. There's going to be a knock on his door throughout the season at times, down 15 in Minnesota or up 10 in this game, foul trouble for Sengun and a few other guys. He's going to get another opportunity to play some bulk minutes. He's just got to make sure that he's ready, and that's kind of the advice that I've given him and other players of the like that have reached out to me when they go through these circumstances of being in the doghouse. It's a hard spot to be, and you feel like the walls are closing in, but there's nothing you can do about it. But hopefully be professional. Patty Mills, garbage time only once again versus Cleveland. He had 3 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists in 13 minutes. But other than that, he's only really getting in the game if they're up 20 or down 20 in the fourth quarter. So we hope that he finds some minutes, at least after the new year, whether he gets traded, bought out, and signed somewhere else to fill a role, just because the Boomers is around the corner and Paris is around the corner. You don't want a guy that's coming off playing no minutes in the NBA to go on into the Boomers. Matisse Thybulle, 4.2 points, 3.2 rebounds, 1 assist game, 2.2 steals, and 1.4 blocks. So defensive end's still really, really good. His numbers as far as scoring have dried up. He was double that a couple of weeks ago, so still decent from 3, 10 for 19. Look, Portland are trying different things. They're trying different lineups. I wouldn't say that their emphasis is winning right now. It's developing Simons and a few of the other guys. Reith's there playing real good basketball as well. So they're kind of all over the place with the way they're playing. They're competitive. They're not your Detroit Pistons or your Spurs. They're going to go on these 15, 20 game losing streaks. They're still going to be competitive, but whether Matisse is home there long term, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a playoff team that maybe goes after him, a team that's got a chance at the playoffs, whether they go to try to get him this season or next season or season, who knows? But I know his contract situation is he might be there for a little while. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone knocks on that door. And for a few other Portland role players, they might be looked at around the deadline to try to move some things around because they've got some useful guys that could help a championship team get over the top. Josh Giddey, 12.2 points, 7 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1 steal, 7 for 14 from 3 in the last 2 weeks. So a very, very good shooting stint for him. Better numbers than the previous 2 weeks, but he did get hurt today. He looks like he busted his ankle pretty bad. It was a non-contact ankle turn, went to Euro or pivot, and his ankle completely gave out over itself. So I'd anticipate he's going to be out at least 10 days, if not more. But he was, similar form minute-wise, but starting to find a little bit from the three-point line, which is good to see. Ben Simmons still not playing, hasn't played since November 5. We are now December 22, so he's almost at 2 months. A report did come out this week saying he's shown improvement and he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So hopefully he gets healthy. You never want to see a guy dealing with this kind of stuff. There's people out there second guessing whether he's really hurt. Is it a mental thing? You hate to see all that kind of stuff with a guy that's as promising a talent as Ben Simmons, but we hope to see him back on the court. Brooklyn are playing pretty good basketball right now. We hope that he can get back out there and potentially float that into a Boomers off season and the Paris Olympics. Dwight Reith continues to play well. 9.8 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist a game off the bench for Portland. For the most part, Aiden's been in and out, so he finds some games where he plays 20 to 25, and he's still shooting piss out of the ball. 7 for 17 from 3 in the last 2-week period. So I'm really enjoying his growth. I mean, he basically signed on as a camp invite, non-guarantee, and played himself into a roster spot, and now Portland are not going to let him go, but if they happen to, there'll be a line of teams hoping to get his signature as a backup big, because whenever you got a backup big that can be strong, physical, and shoot threes, you're going to be a wanted commodity in the NBA. But for our 2-time Aussie Player of the Week, I got to go with Dante Exum again. He continues his blistering form. 17 points, 3.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1 steal per game, 12 for 19 from 3 in the last 2 weeks. And that's coming off the previous 2 weeks, which were similar numbers. So he's playing really, really good basketball. It seems as though he's solidified that starting spot. So it's going to be interesting to see when Josh Green comes back, what his minutes look like in our Aussie watch. I think his minutes are going to be significantly impacted by the way Dante's playing. And I've just loved seeing Dante be able to play off the ball. In Europe, he was predominantly early in his career, he was playing a little bit off, but towards the end of his Euro career, he was very, very ball dominant. So then come to the NBA, you're playing with Luka Doncic, he's going to own the ball for the most part of the game. Dante knows how to play off the ball. It's catch and shoot, it's catch and drive, it's make the right play, and I've really enjoyed seeing his career. It's fluctuated, coming from Utah and all that kind of stuff, had the injuries, was in and out of rotations, in and out of lineups, out of the league completely, goes to Europe, reinvents himself, has come back. I love these kind of stories. It's a Hollywood movie, and Dante should be very proud of the performance he's put in to date. And I think he'll continue this form, and can't wait to see him obviously be a lock for the Boomers. So that's the Aussies in the NBA this week. Trent, I don't know if you've got any comments on any of those guys?
No, yeah, I think the most interesting part is to see how Dante affects Josh moving forward. But I think there's a few guys there that it's worrying because there's not a lot of basketball being played across the board for a lot of the guys. And like you've said multiple times, like it's not ideal heading into the Olympics with, lack of reps, lack of minutes. And those 4 weeks, 6 weeks beforehand then become really important. So hopefully, there's some movement or some things change come second half of the season that some of these guys start, seeing the court a little bit more ahead of Paris.
Yeah, that's a huge concern, at least for me, being obviously close to the Boomers and being a fan and wanting them to do very, very well. Whenever you've got guys that are not playing for their club team, I'd almost argue that you take a guy playing in the NBL at 35 minutes a game, let's say Chris Golding, versus someone like, that's not playing minutes, Josh Green, playing, let's say hypothetically he was playing no minutes for the Mavs this whole season. Josh Green's obviously the better player overall, but Golding's feeling good about himself. He's played minutes. He's in the MVP running. To a guy that's getting DMPs in the NBA, it's always a tricky one. Conditioning, shape, your mental health basketball-wise. Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling yourself? Are you feeling like you're going to knock all these shots down? Whereas Josh Green, let's say hypothetically, he doesn't play much. You're trying to find yourself and reinvent yourself through the national team. So it's always an interesting one that coaches of the national team have to deal with. And you'll see, people that after national teams are announced, there's always these people online like, how could he make it? This guy's better than him. Well, unfortunately, it's not a one-on-one game. Like, you're not comparing player X to player Y and saying, well, if it was one-on-one, the guy that got cut would win. Well, he doesn't feel the need for that team. His form wasn't good. He didn't play a whole lot the last season. And that's a danger you got right now. Ben Simmons, you got Ben Simmons, you got Josh Green, you got Patty Mills, Jock Landale, just not playing much. That's 4 integral parts of your Boomers program Joe Ingles obviously is back in the rotation, but he's hurt. Josh Giddey's hurt with all the distractions off the floor. So there's a lot going on with the Aussies in the NBA. Dyson Daniels now kind of out of the lineup that is not favorable for a Boomers positive stint, which you don't like to see. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge of the NBA season, but you just don't like to see it. I'd love to see Patty Mills getting a consistent 15 off the bench. Ben Simmons back and healthy. Jock Landale getting 10 to 15, playing through good and bad. Josh Green being in the rotation. That'd be the ideal world for the Boomers, but we don't live in an ideal world, and that's where it's very, very dangerous right now for the Boomers program. So I'll be interested to see how that all fares individually for those guys. All right, stats, useful or useless. You're going to have to be the useful or useless guy, Trent, so get ready. You're going to have to let me know if these stats are useful or useless according to the brain of Trent. But we have 4 decent ones this week. The Bulls' win percentage this season, they are 27.8% with Zach Lavine, and they are 63.6% without Zach Lavine. Just for context, Zach Lavine's career win-loss record, he's about a 36% win-loss record right now. So he's shooting 360, and it's his 9th year in the league. Useful or useless stat?
I'm going to go, might not get agreed with here, but I'm going to say useless because I think an interesting one, like I remember last year when Ja missed a bunch of games, not because of the suspension, but Memphis were rolling without him. I think they went on like a 12 or 13 game win streak, something like that. You would never in your right mind say that the Memphis Grizzlies are better without Ja Morant. And I think it's the same here. Zach Lavine's an all-star. I think when it comes to his leadership skills, they're obviously lacking. And I think this is the most telling part of this percentage is just when he's on the floor, there is a lack of effort, a lack of, want to win, and it might roll over into those young guys that are coming off the bench for him, etc. So that could be a contagious factor, but I'm going to go with useless.
Interesting. I think it's in between. I'm going to have to go with useful just because it's his 9th year in the league. He's got to figure it out. He's got to figure out that not all 9 years they had horrible rosters. He's in Minnesota for a period where they had a decent roster. The Bulls have a decent roster. It seems like right now, wherever he goes, losses follow, and you don't want to have that stigma. And look, some of it could be attributed to bad luck, bad GMs, bad coaches. I get it totally, but when you're in your 9th year in the league, and you continue to have a win-loss record like that, I think that's what if I'm Zach Lavine, that's the chip on the shoulder I have. I don't have that. I'm a number one superstar that can get you 50. I should be in the same breath as all the other guys. I'm disrespected. People are sleeping on me. My thing would be, I need to prove that I can win. I'm happy to give up. I'm averaging 25. I'm happy to average 18, but win games. That's what I haven't seen from Lavine. So I go useful on that one, and I just think that he's got to figure it out, and we'll see what the Bulls do there. But his value is not in a great spot, and be interested to see how things go. All right, Klay Thompson. Everyone has reportedly put things out there about his form. Should they trade him? Klay knocked back an extension in the offseason. People were saying that was crazy. He doesn't deserve one, blah, 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 blah. His last 4 games, he's had 30 points on 8 3-point makes, 24 points on 4 3-point makes, 28 points on 5 threes, and 24 points on 6. Do you think he's back, Trent?
Has to be. With a stat line like that. And Klay is not a player that hasn't been prone to this in the past where he's had bad shooting stretches. It's just been, masked by the Warriors' greatness over the years. And I just think a shooter like this, like he's going to continue to get his shots up, and with time, anyone of Klay's caliber is just going to start making them. So it's good to get the misses out early and get rolling now, heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I agree. Look, he's a volume guy, and he's going to have volume bad stretches and volume good stretches. But the issue is coming off the injuries that he had, 2 injuries that basically 2.5, 3 years were a write-off for him, and then having to come back and then find his form. His defense as well has always been talked about being a two-way player. Trying to find his legs back has been a journey for him, and he's been on record saying that. It's not easy to come back from what he's had to deal with off the floor. But he's going to have games where, he shoots at, 8 threes, 30 points, automatic. And he's going to have stretches where he doesn't. But the thing about Klay is when he starts getting his eye in and has a stretch of 4 or 5 games, he's a different player. when he's not thinking about it. Whereas when he's in his bad stretches, you can see him searching for it and probably sometimes over searches and takes some bad shots to try and find his form and rush it back. I'd be not worried, but the Warriors start to find a little bit of form right now. Steph's playing some better basketball. They've made some rotations on their bench. Clay's starting to get his eye in. They could make a little run here, so I like it, and I think it's a useful stat. All right, Steph Curry's streak of 268 consecutive games with a made 3-point field goal have come to an end in Portland, of all places. He went 0 for 8. That was the longest streak in NBA history all time. Last time Curry did not make a three was November 8th, 2018 against the Bucks. Useful or useless?
It's definitely useful, but it's kind of mind-boggling. Like, I think the next closest was Dane with 101. So like Curry's got like 2 or 3 seasons there of consecutive threes in games. So like, it's insane, but it's indicative of him just being the greatest shooter ever, really.
Yeah, it's the 5th season, so 2018. So we're in the 5th season. So it's just unbelievable. And what's crazier about him is, the degree of difficulty that he makes them. Generally off the dribble, generally hard contests, generally getting hit sometimes. Guys are trying to make him drive, and he still manages to make at least one a game. Some people think, that's easy. Well, not when you're top of the scouting list and everyone's trying to make you get into the paint. It's just a sensational thing that we're watching. I hope people appreciate, the greatness of Steph Curry and kind of everything that he's done to this point. I've never seen a guy that's made 3-point shots off the dribble like him. Now, Klay and him catch and shoot, they're in the conversation. You could go either way. Where Steph separates himself from the greatest shooters in the league, your Reggie Millers, your Klay Thompsons, your Ray Allens, is just his ability to cross through the legs, behind the back, step back sideways, just an all net when he gets hot is just a beautiful thing to watch. I know because I was a meter away a lot of the time setting the screens for him and just seeing these shots get hoisted over my head thinking, wow, that's a crazy shot, and there's been nothing but net. And you actually become normalized and immune to what he's doing as a teammate sometimes. And I think fans and coaches are the same because it's just happening so consistently that it becomes normal. Whereas if that was your run-of-the-mill player doing that, people would be freaking out. So I think we're really blessed with a phenomenal player that I hope people appreciate and continue to watch. Last one, we're going to give some female basketball players, women's athletes, some love. Caitlin Clark is the first player in Division I history, both women's and men's, with 3,000 points, 750 rebounds, and 750 assists. Useful or useless?
Useful. Go talk. It's pretty simple. Like for someone to be the first in anything, especially in NCAA history, as esteemed as it is, the greatest players ever have come through the NCAA, likes Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to be number one, men or women, is astonishing. So definitely useful.
Yeah, useful. Just crazy numbers. I mean, those kind of crazy numbers. I'd have to check what her per game numbers are, depending on how many games they've played there. But just amazing. And there's a reason why she's staying in college. Obviously, we've discussed that she's making more money in college than she will in the WNBA, which is a whole separate issue. But one of those female athletes, female basketball players that you'd pay good money to go and watch, just with their skill set and the way she shoots it. I think people really enjoy and are in awe of the way she plays the game. So very, very useful stat, in my opinion. All right, NBL. Last week, Kings bounced back. They beat Tassie. They moved to second, played probably the best game of the season, in my opinion. I think they played from start to finish, good, solid defensively. Jalen Galloway made a great return with over 20 points, had some really big baskets late. Just his energy was key. They go on to win that. United continue to be untouchable, so no surprises there. Easily the top of the table. Illawarra playing much better under Tatum. Can they get into 6? That is a question. They're not far off it right now. We'll go through the ladder very, very shortly. That was last week. This week, we've had 2 games so far, time of recording. The Kings laying an absolute egg once again against the New Zealand Breakers. Just not a great game, very poor defensively, and gave up an early lead. I watched that game, actually. Gave up a very big lead early, 10 to 15 points, clawed all the way back to, I think, take the lead by maybe 2 points or a point, and then New Zealand steamrolled the Kings late in that game. But the Kings just need to really, really figure things out defensively and hold some, get some accountability individually. I think there's at times it's a guilty by association is easy to wave off when things go wrong defensively, but every guy's got to take their individual battle a bit more seriously, in my opinion. Giving up 100 points consistently in the NBL is not going to do much for your chances to win a championship. And as noted by numerous people, I think Peter Hawley, NBL commentator, other NBL analysts have stated that you need to be somewhere in the top 4 offensively and defensively to have a chance to win a championship. And I believe most of the last, I don't know how far back we're going, 5-10 years, the NBL champions are top 4 in both those things. The Kings right now are poor defensively, and that needs to improve. Beyond that, Mitch Creek has a knee injury. I'm not sure the extent of it. There's been some curveballs thrown from Southeast Melbourne trying to say, we're going to reevaluate in a week and he should be all right. We'll see how it goes. I've heard 4 to 6 weeks. Who knows? Don't know what the deal is with some NBL clubs lying about these kinds of things, trying to, I guess, fool other teams into their scouting reports preparing for him, but other teams aren't silly. But that hurts them big time. They were playing some pretty decent basketball, inconsistent, but pretty decent in the top 6. I think they're going to fall out completely if he's out 4 to 6 weeks. So that's a huge one. Casey Prather has signed with the Brisbane Bullets. I think it's a big signing as far as a name for Brisbane. The issue is, can he stay healthy? He's had 2 major knee surgeries, I believe, in the last, 24 months. So, and before that had a very, very long list of injuries that he's had. A very, very awesome player early in his NBL career. Injuries, went overseas, got hurt. I think had some issues overseas, but potentially being misdiagnosed or playing with an injury when he shouldn't have been made things worse. I think his leadership and knowing the NBL will help the Brisbane Bullets. Does it help them and put them over the line to get in the, solidifying a top 6 spot? Yet to be seen, because I need to see if he's healthy or not. But I'd assume Brisbane would have done their DD and made sure that he's at least, can get through a full workout. I'd assume they'd probably send someone out or have a film or have a scout that's watched a full workout. That most likely would have been one-on-one or with a coach. It's a different story when you're out there 5-on-5 and you're in the grind of an NBL season. So we'll watch that space, but that's been it's been an interesting signing for them. You look at the table, Melbourne, I mean, they're clear front runners. They should lock up number 1. They play Perth. The Perth game will be gone by the time you hear this recording, so we won't know that result. But they play Perth tomorrow at time of recording. That'll be a good game, but I think they'll get that one at home. Melbourne and Perth, first and second. Perth basically a second. Third is Tasmania. Fourth is Sydney. They're all within a game of each other or tied. If Perth lose to Melbourne, they'll fall back down to potentially 4th. So it's going to be a bit of a Tetris game with those top 4 teams, in my opinion. Then you got Cairns, so Sydney are 9-7, Tasmania 9-7, Perth 9-6. Cairns are sneaking in at 5th with 8-9 on percentage. Southeast Melbourne 8-9, a little bit lower on percentage, and then you got the Bullets at 7-9. New Zealand are 6-9, and I would not be surprised to see them make the 6 still. I think heard Peter Hawley say something similar. I agree with him. I think that they are a sneaky chance. They've had a horror run with injuries. They're getting all these guys back. McDowell White's back. Cheatham's supposed to be coming back. I know Delaney's out 4 to 6 weeks, but I don't think I think he's a good player. I don't think he's an integral part. I think getting Cheatham and McDowell White back will be huge for them, and their other imports are playing very good basketball. Their next star's playing very well. I think they've got a sneaky chance of getting to that 6. I think Southeast Melbourne, will fall out. And then I think it's going to be Brisbane or New Zealand that step in. Illawarra is the other question. Can they make the 6? There's a bit of noise around that. They've got games in hand. They've only played 13 games. They've played the least amount of games in the NBL. They're 5-8. If they get on a little streak here and get to 500, let's say they get to they're 5-8, go 4-1, they end up being 9-9. They're all of a sudden in the 5. So NBL season it's been fun. Outside of Melbourne being so dominant, I think from 2 down to probably 8 is wide open right now, and it's going to be an interesting season. But a lot of teams with work to do, some injuries, some this and that. But it's been fun to watch, Trent.
Yeah, super interesting. I think you make a great point. From week to week, I feel like the league's completely different with who's competitive and who looks good. There's been points of time where Sydney have looked really dominant in that 2 spot, and Perth were outside the 6. So I think it's still pretty much up in the air. There's a lot of games to play, but the only constant is United. And It'll be interesting to see if anyone can get it together in time to be able to compete with them come finals time, because I just think they've had the whole year to play together. They've had some injuries and stuff, but ultimately, like the way they're rolling right now, it looks like they're going to be pretty hard to beat come finals.
Yeah, look, I look at it both ways. I think Melbourne have not really been overly tested this season. They've just kind of flown on. They've got a very deep squad. They have not really hit any adversity, even with injuries. Maybe early on they had a few guys out, but I think that's the only thing you could probably say, okay, have they had their adversity for the season? You don't want to have the adversity in the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs. That's where it's dicey, but anyone would die to be in their position rather than second, third, fourth, or fifth, or sixth, or seventh, or eighth, right? So that's the only knock you have at Melbourne. You just want to make sure that they're battle tested, but they're such a professional unit. Their bench is tough. Dellavedova and Ely are two-headed monster defensively. Chris is having a phenomenal year. He's in the MVP race, and rightfully so. They got Biggs, Huckporty, and they got, Chul. They got a really good balance on that roster. Like the way they've built it. They got some youth. They got some veteran leadership. Cameron's coming off the bench for him, hit some threes. So they are going to be tough to beat in a series. The thing is, they're going to avoid these playing one game teams, which I think is huge for them, because they are a team you could knock off on in a 1-game series, right? But in a 3-game or a 5-game series, I think they're going to be very tough to beat. Perth playing some really good form. Tassie as well, just a little bit inconsistent, but I'm looking forward just to seeing how it all solidifies. I think Sydney's, adversity has hit this last month. Adversity's there. It's how does that squad figure it out? And there's only 2 ways they can go. They can go north or south. If they figure it out, that adversity is going to be bottled up and used as a positive. The bad teams use it as it ends up being a negative and derails your season. A la Illawarra, a la one of these teams, Adelaide, coach gets fired, all kinds of shit happens. The good teams use that as a positive. So I'm interested to see how they go in the next couple of weeks. Some big games coming up there. But yeah, it's just cool to see how close it is. I think the play-ins definitely open up some different things in the NBL. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of them initially, but I think they keep teams fighting that are in that 6, 7, 8 spot rather than just putting the queue in the rack and rebuilding for next season. So if you're not an NBL fan, jump on. Some of these games are very, very competitive, and we're getting to the tail end of the season. So we're halfway point for most teams, or just over. 28-game season. Most teams have anywhere between 9 and 12 games left. So looking forward to seeing that and seeing how it all goes. That's basically it for this week. I
got one for you, Bogues. I got a fact or fake news.
Beautiful.
So I think there was some comments earlier this week from Shaquille O'Neal after Curry's late game heroics against the Celtics. Basically, he said that Curry, when are we going to start putting Curry in the GOAT conversation? He's already the greatest shooter ever. And Shaq went as far to say he would put Curry above himself in that all-time ranking. But fact or fake news, is Steph ready to be spoken with as one of the greatest player of all time? Sorry.
It's a tough one. I saw this post pop up on my Instagram feed and had Shaq's numbers versus Steph's. Shaq's still elite. Like, Shaq's numbers were not shooting wise. Obviously, we're comparing apples and oranges here because Shaq was predominantly an inside force that just dominated the paint and made defensive schemes were a little bit different to what you're dealing with Steph. But it's a hard comparison because they're different players. But I agree that Steph needs to be in the conversation of one of the all-time greats. Would I have him above Shaq? I'm not sure. It's hard. It's debatable. Shaq was, people always look at, Shaq couldn't shoot, but I played against him later on in his career, and it was teams were literally stocking up centers on their bench for Shaq in the playoffs, right? It was like, whereas teams that were facing the Warriors were getting perimeter defensive stoppers, so it's kind of the same thing in a different realm. It's a tough one for me. I hate these kind of comparisons just because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But one thing I will agree with Shaq is that he deserves, and I mentioned this earlier in the pod just by accident, I think a lot of people sleep on what he's doing and what he's done, and his shooting numbers. His career shooting numbers, 91% from the free throw line, 42% from three, 42.7 and 47 from the field. That 42.7 from three over his career, man, when you look at just how tough those shots are that he takes on a consistent basis, when you look at what defenses are trying to do to get the ball out of his hands and not let him get up a three, when you look at the fact that he's then had to develop his shooting to be 4 or 5 steps beyond the three-point line, and what that then does to your offensive space in getting guys like myself or Draymond or Zaza Pachulia or JaVale McGee getting those guys layups, because now all of a sudden their defense is stretched so far. As far as that goes, I think, he's done a fantastic job. But then you look at Shaq. Shaq did the same thing, but from inside out. It was like the whole defense had to pack the paint, where he's kicking out to Robert Horry, he's kicking out to Kobe Bryant, Derek Fisher, wide open, feet set threes. So they both are the very epitome of making the game easier for teammates. And that's what you look at. There's superstars that are, this is where I'd put Zach Lavine. I don't have him as a superstar. I have him as a next tier star, but he's a star that he's going to get you numbers. You get you 30, star, got you 30. Steph, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, LeBron James, they get their numbers dominantly, but they also make the game easier for everyone around them. And that's the true sign of a superstar. So there's only a handful of those guys in NBA history, 10, 15, 20 guys that were dominant forces on their own right numbers wise, but also you could just see it was like Mozart. It was just a flow with their team of like everyone felt comfortable and felt confident. And that's what Steph Curry and Shaq are. So kind of dodge a question a little bit, but I'll take both.
No, answered it perfectly. They answered it perfectly for all the casuals out there. Just gave them a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, these ones are tough. And the only ones worse than this are era comparisons, like comparing, LeBron and Michael Jordan, different era, or Larry Bird to Nikola Jokic. I hate that kind of stuff because today's numbers are heavily inflated. Don't get me, let's be honest, today's numbers are inflated compared to what they were in the 80s and 90s because analytics, the three ball, referees are calling everything these days. There's much more free throw shot. So it's hard to compare eras. Eras are the worst to compare, but the next one is this. Obviously, comparing a shooting guard to a big is just so hard to do. But I was surprised because Shaq usually doesn't give too much. I guess he doesn't really put too many players above himself. So obviously wanted to make a splash with what he said, and I respect the fact that he can say, I think he's better than me and has done more than I did. That's a pretty big statement for a guy that was literally one of the most dominant human beings in basketball ever to play the game. So interesting. Good one, though. We might fill you in for pro. Hopefully we'll get pro an alarm clock. We'll get him a calendar. We'll send him a Google time calendar that has 3 or 4 different time zones, and he'll jump on. So as we were recording this, I got a text from him saying, first threw you under the bus, Trent. He said, Trent told me 8 a.m. Dallas time. And then within a minute, he wrote back, correcting himself, saying, oh, shit, no, my bad. He did say 7. So he must have been having a late breakfast there up in his Cheerios, and we'll see him all next week. But that is all for this week. Appreciate everyone tuning in. The dedication to the pod, I'm currently traveling on holidays with the family. As you can see, hotel room behind me, try to get a podcast out for everyone. Enjoy doing these. I hope you appreciate the effort we put into them. Like, subscribe, all that boring stuff. Tell a friend about us, and we'll see you all next week.